bed. So it's safe to talk about flying saucers and people from outer space, people who may be circulating among us now and who demonstrate their unearthly qualities if they choose you as one of their agents by disappearing and reappearing at will in your very presence, in front, if necessary, of many witnesses, and who land on this materialistic earth in flying saucers, to which you, if you're one of the chosen, shall enter through an anti-gravity elevator. Nothing to hold you up. You just whisk up into the body of the flying saucer, a scout ship from outer space. No, I'm not really joking, because I've got a man now, here and now, one of the men who claims fervently that he has met these people from outer space, has talked to them, and has been given secrets of things such as a time machine from men from outer space. You'll meet this man after this plebeian and earthly message. The man you're going to meet in a moment or two, Van Tassel, from Giant Rock, California, is a most unlikely person to claim to have seen flying saucers and been in touch with people from outer space. George is a very ordinary fellow. He doesn't make any money out of his flying saucer beliefs, but boy, he really believes them. And before I start talking to George, I want to tell you, too, that I do have a couple of doubts in my mind. We all see these newspaper reports from Socorro, New Mexico, that a mysterious craft landed and took off and left blast marks in the sand. Airline pilots from time to time talk delicately about strange aircraft circling their normal aircraft in flight, perhaps even cutting off the power of their engines momentarily. We all love to talk about the mysterious and the unknown and the flying saucers. So now it's to George Van Tassel and this question. Time machine you're building down in California.
Well, Jack, this was the result of a formula which was given to me by a man who landed a ship at my airport in 1953. And we put this formula under research, tested a number of experiments on a bench in a good electronics lab in Chicago, and we produced phenomenal results with evidence that we should do it on a larger scale in order to be able to do more with it. And this evolved out of something that started in 1953 into a 4-story high machine that we're working on down there today.
Now, George, I don't care whether the machine is 4 stories high or 40 stories high or 4 inches high. When I say calmly and unexcitedly, a time machine, what does your formula tell you you can do with a time machine?
Well, Jack, our formula has no time factor, which electronic formula does have. And on the other hand, electronic science has only had 2 dimensions to work with, the electric pattern and the magnetic pattern perpendicular to it. And we discovered a 3rd zone, which we call a time zone, and we are working through this zone with an effort to orient the magnetic field to give us other results than our science can obtain at present.
George, just double talk to me. A time machine means to me a little box that I can go into and go back 5,000 years or forward 10,000 years. Is that what your formula tells you can do?
Well, Jack, this isn't a little box. This is a 4-story machine focusing fields that we can orient to produce this zone big enough for a man to get into. It isn't a box.
But what happens to the man when he gets into the zone?
Well,
I'm all agog with curiosity.
Jack, we've discovered this zone is subject to thought. Now, since time doesn't record events the way we do on calendars and clocks, you could only record an event by thinking of it. Now, theoretically, we believe we can take a videotape magnetic camera into the time zone and photograph Lincoln's Gettysburg Address or Caesar's armies marching or anything that's ever happened.
All right, let me get this straight. In other words, you're telling me, like H.G. Wells imagined 50 years ago, that everything that happened in time is still there to be seen by the recreation electronically of a thought which exists.
Jack, you know how you talk into a tape on a tape recorder and play the interruptions back, identical to the play that you made. The Earth's magnetic field is the same way. You can put interruptions into it and play them back out of it. An associate of ours in creating a magnetic coupler with this principle coupled in the Earth's magnetic field and played back TV shows from stations that aren't even in business anymore.
You mean an experiment has been done to bring out of the air television programs which have been and gone?
Been and gone.
Now, where was this experiment conducted?
It was conducted in Santa Monica by an associate of mine.
Why hasn't this hit the headlines throughout the world? That's a time machine in action. If I can...
Jack, the reason it hasn't hit the world is because, as I understand it now, the Navy Department took him and the research over because he also discovered he could bounce magnetic echoes off the ionosphere and locate submarines under the ocean, regardless of where they were.
So who is this associate of yours?
This is a fellow named Charlie Arts.
Charlie Arts?
Yeah.
And is he a free man walking around today?
Well, he's free where he is in this super-secret research he's conducting.
Now, so therefore, you tell me soberly in front of this television camera that things, old television programs have been recreated out of nothing.
Played back with a picture and the sound just as good as the day they were broadcast. We've done this many times.
Why didn't you bring one up with you?
Well, this requires quite a piece of apparatus. This magnetic coupler works on around 50,000 volts, and it doesn't have any radio frequency connected with it. And actually, the television set which plays back the picture doesn't even have an antenna connected to it.
George, you know as well as I do, and you've been on television 350 times, and I've known you. I met you once 7 years ago, and I kind of like you. Mm-hmm. But you know what the people out there are saying. They're saying this man's a nut.
Well, Jack, you know, when Fulton was running his steamboat up the Hudson River, there were people still standing on the bank saying it couldn't be done.
All right, let me take you further back, though. You have a time machine plan. You have done experiments which show you can bring the past to life. Where did this formula come from?
I love that Scotch accent. Jack, the formula came from a ship that landed at my airport in 1953 on August the 24th. Which had 4 people aboard it that came from another planet.
I'm breathless.
Well, you're not only breathless, I was breathless.
But I'm cynical, too.
Well, that's fine. That's the way to be. In fact, I'm a bigger skeptic than you are of many things.
I'm an unbeliever. Convince me that this really happened to you.
Well, this thing is very similar to a thing that's happened in our biblical records where a Lord presented Moses with a pattern to build a tabernacle. They came out of the sky, they handed him stone tablets, and this phenomena that's taking place today is as old as our history, as our civilization. This isn't anything new that's occurring. It's something that's being continued in another time of crisis when conditions affecting the people of this planet are reaching a point where somebody has to take care of the situation.
Now, I don't intend in any way to be disrespectful or blasphemous, but do you feel, and I know you're not an evangelistic type, do you feel that you're some kind of Moses receiving a new word?
Well, I don't say that, Jack. I say that what is occurring now has occurred before. There's many records of these ships landing throughout history, clear back into Sanskrit. And there are records in the 1898 Chicago newspapers that covered the front page for 3 days of a big ship setting over Chicago. When you realize we're dealing with a type of man that is almost as far above us in intelligence as we are above the lower animals, there isn't anything phenomenal in this at all.
Now, you say casually, because this is your life's work now, ships. Now, you mean flying saucer, don't you?
Well, a flying saucer was a name the press put on this thing. And actually what they termed a flying saucer was nothing but a scout ship from the big carriers.
But I want to go back to that night in 1953. Tell me, where did this happen for people who haven't heard you talk or seen you yet?
It happened on my airport, which I've operated for the last 16 years, at Giant Rock Airport, 17 miles north of Yucca Valley in California, or 40 miles north of Palm Springs.
Now, this is a private airport for small aircraft, is it?
This is an airport used both by the military and private aircraft.
You own this airport, do you?
I lease this airport from the United States government. I've operated it for 16 years since I retired from the flight test business in the aviation.
Right now. How old are you now, by the way, George?
I'm 54, Jack. Got 3 grown daughters married and 11 grandchildren.
You don't mind if I ask you the stock question? I know that you've been asked every obnoxious question that can ever have been asked. You've never been treated for any form of emotional upset.
I've never had an emotional upset other than women.
Except that night in Yucca Flats, not Yucca Flats, at Giant Rock, when this ship appeared. Now, give me the details, George, because I'm never tired of hearing the details of a man who says he has seen creatures from another world.
Well, actually, Jack, this was as simple as crossing a street and getting hit by a car. After it's over, you're the victim of the circumstance. And I didn't see the ship land. One of my son-in-laws, that wasn't my son-in-law at that time, saw it come down. Another man on the airport heard it, and he wasn't where he could see it. And the man got off of the ship and approached me before I even knew there was a ship down.
Where were you then? What time of day or night was it?
It was 2 o'clock in the morning and approximately a full moon, which is like daylight on the desert.
Were you walking about outside or what?
No, I was sound asleep when he awakened me.
This man awakened you?
Well, something awakened me.
So you got up out of your bed?
I got out of my bed and went aboard the ship at his request.
This man, in what language did he converse with you?
He talked to me in the best English equivalent to Ronald Coleman.
And he met you there and he said, what did he say, come with me to my ship, or what?
No, he said, I asked him what he wanted because we have a lot of people who come in stuck in the sand and broken axles and whatnot. And I asked him what he wanted, and he said, my name is Solganda, and I would be pleased to show you our craft.
Solganda?
Solganda.
Was the craft visible to you at this time?
It was when he stated this, I saw beyond him the ship, which I hadn't seen before.
What did you see?
A bell-shaped type of anti-gravity ship that they operate as a scout ship out of their big carriers.
How big?
This was 36 feet in diameter and 19 feet high.
And where was it, on the ground?
No, it was hovering 10 feet off the ground.
And how did you go into this ship?
I walked with him to a spot underneath it, and an anti-gravity beam took me up through a hole in the bottom of it.
You're telling me at 2 o'clock in the morning in Giant Rock Airport, you walked underneath this hovering ship, and whammo, you went up inside.
No, you didn't go whammo. You went just about as slow as a local elevator run.
And when you got off the anti-gravity elevator, what did it look like?
I was inside of a ship about 18 feet in diameter and roughly 10 feet high to the domed ceiling, and there were 3 men on the ship, besides the one that had got off and invited me aboard.
You keep calling them man. What do you mean, man?
Well,
Little green man?
They were about 5'6". They came about to my eyebrows, and they could have walked in our clothes down any of our streets, and we wouldn't have paid any attention to them.
And did you bring any proof off that ship? Were you alone in the ship?
I was alone with the 3 men until the other fellow came up behind me, and then the 4 of them were aboard.
Were there any other earthly eyewitnesses to this?
Nothing, only outside of the ship.
And these people stayed outside?
On the airport.
And did you go anywhere in this ship?
Not to my knowledge. When I got off, it was the same place it was when I got on.
What do you mean, not to your knowledge? Had the door closed when you went in or something?
I don't know, because it was below the deck.
And did these people tell you where they came from?
They didn't say where they came from, but I've been in the air game since 1927, and their instruments were unlike anything I'd ever seen before.
Well, don't give me technicalities. What was different?
The difference was that we used dial instruments, and they used vertical instruments, like fluorescent tubes with marks on them.
What color were these people?
The instruments were marked in symbols similar to hieroglyphics. They were not in any language or number system we use on the Earth.
What color were these people?
They looked like they were white people with a good, healthy tan.
Did they give you any indication of how old they were, or what they ate, or where they came from at all?
After we got off the ship, the man who invited me aboard, who didn't look a day over 28 years of age, told me that he was over 700 years of age in our time.
Oh, come off it, George.
That's right.
Was this the guy who gave you the formula for the time machine?
That's the man.
And what form did the formula take? Did he implant it in your mind by telepathy, or did he give you something written in English?
He spoke it to me verbally.
And you remembered this?
There's nothing to it to remember.
Will you tell me now? The
Yes.
formula for a time machine.
F equals 1 over T.
F equals 1 over T.
F being frequency and T being time.
And this enables me to go back to the time of Caesar's armies conquering Britain.
Well, it would enable a mathematician to work this out, yes.
And why hasn't this been acclaimed like Einstein's E equals mc squared?
Well, why hasn't the fact that the United States government's been flying anti-gravity ships since 1956 been acclaimed? Or the fact that there's a crater on the moon with a base in it since 1954, we've known this.
All right, but let's get, first of all, the U.S. Why haven't the FBI clapped you incommunicado for breaking secrets that they want to keep secret in the United States?
Well, possibly because they know this information's going to get out eventually anyway, and what I say won't make any difference.
Now, that particular night when you had this experience, did you call the police? Did you call the Army, the Navy, the Air Force, the White House?
Well, I'm 17 miles from the nearest phone, Jack, and the nearest phone would get me to the sheriff's office, and it'd take them about 40 minutes to get out there.
Or wouldn't you have a phone on an airport?
No, we have no phone.
But you're an operating airport.
Well, we're an operating airport, but we're isolated in the middle of the desert, 17 miles from the closest town, and they've never run phones out there.
So how do you communicate with people who want to use your airport?
They fly in or write and phone to the local town where my daughter lives, and she notifies us when she comes out.
Now, you talked about a crater on the moon. Now, I thought all the moon stuff had been debunked and that nobody ever really knows what goes on the moon. What's this?
Well, this is the Gassendi crater. This is 55 miles long and oval-shaped. It's in the Mare Humorum Sea, or on the edge of it. Since 35 years ago, they wondered why this particular crater had these lines in it. And with the magnification which you can get with the larger telescopes, this is what they found. These lines are tubes laying on the surface of this crater and running under some of the mountain ridges. There are 3 large dome-shaped structures in here. These tubes run clear outside of the crater, and we know they are tubes laying on the surface because the sun is shining from this angle, and this mountain peak causes this shadow.
What does it all mean? Does it mean that this is a rocket launching or a flying saucer base on the moon?
This has been a base on the moon for perhaps many thousands of years, used by these people in the spaceships to resupply their ships or whatever is required.
Not even Life magazine has accepted this is genuine, or has it?
Well, the Palomar Observatory people that took the picture won't even comment on it, so...
There must be a great conspiracy of silence to keep George Van Tassel's secret of the universe away from the people.
No, it isn't to keep anything I know away from the people. It's to keep many things away from the people.
Let's talk about this picture.
This
is the time machine.
This is a picture of the machine we're building down there. This structure is actually up. We're working now on the parts on the equipment that operate it. This rim around here has armatures 57 feet in diameter, which will be better than 4 times bigger than the biggest armatures ever made before.
But is that the place where you did the experiments? By the way, how old were these television programs you pulled back out of time and space?
Well, the oldest one was 6 years back because television was 6 years old when this was done.
And what program was it? Do you remember?
I don't remember what program, but I know that on checking up on some of the stations that Art found that the station no longer existed. It was out of business.
Let's get down to some more basics now. Are you making a lucrative living out of traveling around the world evangelizing for flying, around the continent, evangelizing for flying saucers?
No, Jack, I'm on a vacation to rest my wife because she's been 2 years in a 40-seat